Bitcoin, the price is off its highs, but I think of it like this: when it was at 70,000 a coin, it was telegraphing the hyperinflation to come. Markets are discounting mechanisms. Now that we have a big burst of inflation, it makes sense for Bitcoin to pull back and retrace some of the gains and build a new base, and then catapult up to 200,000-300,000 a coin as the world starts to figure out that there's very few places to hide. As a matter of fact, I would say the only place to hide is Bitcoin. Yeah, I think we're basically in the fourth cycle of scammers. So the Raoul Pal and Mike Novogratz and a few others are kind of at the center of this latest wave of bubble and scams that have come into so-called crypto space. And and as Greg has pointed out, the asset class that is Bitcoin is kind of shrugging it off, and it's not really having an impact on Bitcoin at all, really. Like it used to. In days gone by, some of these major scams, like OneCoin was from a few years ago, and others, they had more of an impact on the price of Bitcoin. And what boils my blood is that rejects from Wall Street, like Mike Novogratz, who was kind of a hedge fund reject. He fucked up his hedge fund. He walked away from the industry for a couple of years and saw an opportunity to recreate all the scammy shit he was doing on Wall Street in crypto. Or Raoul Pal is another Wall Street reject. I guess he wasn't given a partnership option, so he kind of went away and crawled into a cave for a while and saw an opportunity come into Bitcoin. Bitcoin is both the greatest and the worst industry in the world. It attracts the worst people in the world. It also attracts the greatest people. The fact that you've got the smartest and greatest and noblest people in the world working on Bitcoin, you've also got the shittiest, worst, morally bankrupt scumbags in the industry as well. When you put them all together, you get a current price, which is whatever it is right now. Yeah, well, the guy, Don Ho, or is it Do Kwon or Do Kwon? He had been involved in several scams before this one. And so this was just the latest in a series of scams. And it was designed as a scam. It's similar to BitConnect in its design as a scam. And it blew up like a scam. The people who, like, again, Mike Novogratz, who didn't do any due diligence, is irresponsible. It goes beyond just being sloppy. I think it's bordering on the criminal. That he didn't do a shred of due diligence on this very obvious scam. I mean, Corey, of course, was tweeting about it before it blew up and saying, this thing is built to blow up. It's going to blow up, and it blew up. Same thing now with Celsius. Celsius, the more you dig into it, the more it's an obvious scam, and it's in the process of melting down. That's going to be another huge washout in the crypto space. But eventually, Bitcoin is so beautiful that it will push out these crooks, these charlatans, these captured regulators. And, there's no point in trying to sugarcoat it. These guys are recidivist criminal scumbags, and, they deserve to be in prison. The fact that they're not in prison is a shame, really. It shows that the justice system in America is broken down, but I think that's pretty obvious across the spectrum. We see this all the time. I would differentiate between Richard Hart and, let's say, Mike Novogratz and Raoul Pal. Richard Hart, when he launched the project he's involved with now, I remember quite clearly, it said on the cover page that this is a scam. This is a Ponzi scheme. I mean, and I was wondering what the point of that is. But, he said up front, I guess it's to provide cover, but it said this is, in fact, a scam. I mean, it says so right on the cover page. So buyer beware. And again, he's coming from, it's a fairly small scale operation compared to, let's say, these two other guys like Novogratz, who's a Wall Street veteran. He's trafficking in billions of dollars. He cannot claim not to know what he's doing. As Corey pointed out, he's claiming that A, he both made money on the scam, and B, he was unaware that it was a scam. He can't have it both ways. But we live in a world like this now, where if you have regulators in your pocket, then there's no law that applies to you. But what's happened is that little wiggle room has become the defining characteristic of these markets. There is no true price discovery anymore. It's all wiggle room. It's all fraud. The prices are all out of whack. And who suffers the most? The average person, not the people on Wall Street who just get bailed out every time they make one of these egregious lapses in judgment and commits a felony. A situation where Alan Greenspan, who was running the Fed at the time, lowered interest rates to bail out LTCM. And so all the pensioners in America had to collectively bail out these hedge fund guys in Greenwich, Connecticut, as Greg was saying, socialize the losses. And the bankers were saved and everyone else had to suffer. And we're seeing it right now. There's the crisis part 2 from 2008. And everyone who's on Wall Street and is a banker is getting bailed out. And everyone else is suffering from inflation. And everyone else is suffering from price distortions and social unrest. Again, it goes back to this idea of moral hazard, which is, again, the wiggle room. When the central bankers and Al Greenspan and others, or Ben Bernanke or Jay Powell says, we have the right to engage in moral hazard. We have the right to bypass ethics, morality, and the legal system to protect the functioning of these markets and to protect the liquidity of these markets. And what that's done is created an economy and a society based on fraud. All of the sectors of the economy are tied to some degree to their cash desk, where they squeeze out extra profits, engaging in fraud. It's just fraud. And as the dollar loses world reserve currency, Brady, the problem is that other countries are saying, you know what, maybe we don't need America. Maybe we don't need the US dollar. So in this crisis, the difference with this crisis, Brady, is that there's no coming back. The inflation we see now is not going to reverse. Gas is going to $10, $11, $12 a gallon, and it's not going down. Prices of food are going to go up on a permanent basis because the entire globalization of post-World War II is becoming unglued, and the dollar as world reserve currency is losing its cachet. And this is a new reality for America, really, since post-World War II, where the standard of life is going to drop quite significantly because of all these bailouts. The chickens have finally come home to roost. Yeah, because on February 24th, Russia, which is the biggest commodity producer in the world, said, fuck you. And they said essentially that we're going to go from a financialized global economy to an economy that runs on commodities. Right. The price of commodities has been kept artificially cheap by the machinations of financialization and the central banks. And everybody was playing in this world, except for Russia. Russia was never part of the gang, never part of the cartel. It was always going in its own way. And as a result, we are now in a new era, which is a multi-year, secular, inflationary, commodity-driven global economy where money printing and the central banks become increasingly more powerless. Gold has a problem with price discovery we've discussed before. Bitcoin, the price is off its highs, but I think of it like this. When it was at 70,000 a coin, it was telegraphing the hyperinflation to come. Markets are discounting mechanisms. Now that we have a big burst of inflation, it makes sense for Bitcoin to pull back and retrace some of the gains and build a new base and then catapult up to 200,000-300,000 a coin as the world starts to figure out that there's very few places to hide. As a matter of fact, I would say the only place to hide is Bitcoin. But that presumes that the game has another chapter to it. I don't think there is another chapter to it. I think the Fed goes bankrupt. I think the U.S. goes bankrupt. And I think that that's what we're looking at. And I think this is why there's a lot of countries are beating the war drum right now. There's a lot of saber rattling going on. And the U.S. now is going to open up another front against China, as well as the proxy war in Ukraine against Russia. So this is the end of empire stuff, Greg. Yeah. This is like America's had the world reserve currency for 100 years. It's had a great run, but it looks like this could, another 5 years, the U.S. could be pretty much
I concur.
Finished.
Yeah.
The current price of Bitcoin is roughly, 95% discount to the imputed or implied value of the synthetic CDS, as Greg has outlined it. Now that's a huge discount. So, why? I don't, what you're putting forward there is to me, if I was working a desk on Wall Street, I would be able to sell that all day long. I don't understand. I mean, in 1980s, I was selling quote unquote portfolio insurance and sold a lot of it. Of course, that led to the 1987 crash, but that's another story. But in other words, the story is you've got $1 million or $10 million stock portfolio. We can wrap that for 2% a year with derivatives, and you've got a maximum 2% downside on your portfolio, and you've got all your upside. The hedge fund people that are in crypto, like, not to pick on Novogratz too much, but nevertheless, he is the highest profile hedge fund guy in the crypto space. He lives for gamma, right? He never puts this pitch forward because it's so easy to make money shilling shitcoins. You see, if there was some law that applied, some serious enforcement of the current law, they don't need any new laws. All that Gary Gensler has to do is enforce the current laws, and Novogratz would be forced to actually start working for a living and not just shilling crap. And he'd have to look at this trade as Greg has outlined it, and put the power of his fund and his colleagues focused on this. That's another benefit. I think that's another reason why Gary Gensler is completely a captured and unreliable regulator, because he realizes that if he took away the punch bowl of having these guys print money in the shitty way that's completely illegal, they might focus on Bitcoin more. And that would, hurt his paymasters down there on Wall Street. Every trading desk in the world sits on top of CDS products to manage the stack. And so here's a put on a put, which is the same thing as a call.